Hello. Hello there. Welcome in. We'll get started in just a moment here. I'll pour myself some tea and we'll begin when I get back. Okay, I think we have critical mass. Let's begin. Hello, I'm Dr. Kenneth Cornwall, and this is our fourth supplemental lecture for the Poetics of Benjamin Reichwald. This is in lieu of our meeting next week, as I'll be out at a conference, so thank you for accommodating this online version. Today I'm taking what may appear to be a narrow approach, looking at Bladee and baseball, but I promise it has deep implications for his oeuvre. So bear with me as we dive into what I am terming Ben's symbology. As you know by now, this is Bladee wearing a Boston Red Sox t-shirt and a New York Yankees hat. I'm not the biggest baseball fan, but even I know that this is strictly verboten. If you wore this outfit on a street in New York or Boston, you'd get yelled at. It betrays a deep ignorance of baseball and baseball culture. It's oxymoronic. It's arguably moronic. So this outfit obviously demonstrates his lack of understanding about baseball. But crucially, his lyrics confirm this ignorance. On his song Kilos with DJ Nate and Cartier God, Bladee sings, "Ooh, play it like a game baseball." On Golden Boy, he says, "Home run, yeah, I go like 600 yards. Funnily enough, the average American baseball stadium length is 400 feet to dead center, a massive hyperbole here. On Gatekeeper, Bladee says, I'm a hit a home run, I'm a striker," further conflating the sport of soccer with baseball. He even speaks about baseball on the recently released track, Magic Misery. "My wrist looks like a chainsaw. It's hitting like a baseball." So the point being, Bladee demonstrates an ignorance of baseball. He can only speak about it in crude layman's terms. But crucially, he is drawn to it as a topic in his art. So why then does Bladee wear so much baseball paraphernalia? It's ubiquitous in his style. Look, he's wearing Yankees hats, Detroit Tigers hats, Braves bombers. He coats himself in baseball logos all the time. And here's my personal favorite, Bladee using the LA Dodgers logo as the LA in his name, which he also then mixes with the Yankees logo, which is, again, very verboten. But what's the point of all this? The point is that Bladee doesn't love baseball. He doesn't even understand baseball. What he loves is baseball logos. Bladee intuits the symbolic power of these logos. He loves their symbolic density. This is why he has a particular fascination with the Yankees logo. Think of how much history and weight is behind that crossed N and Y. The logo suggests an entire world. To the baseball fan, it suggests Ruth, Mantle, DiMaggio, etc. To the non-baseball fan, it evokes a unique environs, a locale, a city, and the melange of people who live in that city. It evokes America. The New York Yankees logo is arguably the most symbolically dense logo in all of sports. So to go further, Bladee is not drawn to baseball. He is drawn to symbolic density. This is why mixing and matching Red Sox and Yankees is allowed. It's not about fandom. It's about maximizing evocation. This also explains why Bladee continually reaches for a different non-baseball symbol, the densest symbol of all time, the cross. Crosses are everywhere in his art, even though he insists he's not a Christian. As on "The Nine is Up," when he raps, "I'm not a Christian, but I'm busting down the cross." There's no symbol more beautifully dense than the cross, and regardless of Blade's faith, he cannot help but be drawn to it. Blade's fascination with symbols and symbolic density also helps explain why he creates so many symbols in his own art. Symbols are physical things that stand for an abstract idea. And think of how many physical things Bladee creates in his symbology. We have red light, spider, trash, apple, insect, rain, glue. Arguably, the numbers 333 and 9 qualify as numerological symbols. Crest, shield, birdbath, castles and sandcastles, etc., and the list goes on and on. Now, Bladee might not know what his symbols mean, just that they're symbolic and symbolically dense. Look at this answer to an interview question about the symbolism of being a trash star. All Ben can articulate is that he often has the epiphany, wait, that's kind of symbolic. Does it matter that Bladee only knows that his symbols are symbols and not what they symbolize? I leave for another supplemental lecture. Let's analyze red light, for instance, a beautifully intricate symbol, which Bladee elsewhere refers to as an it. On the song number 18, Bladee says, "I made red light and now it's trying to stop me, but I can't let it take me. That is, I can't let it make me." On the album Working on Dying, he describes a red light moment as a late-night drug-filled bender. Red light moments, we're rolling the potent, etc. On Decay, Bladee raps about giving himself up to the red light, and the symbol weighs heavily enough on his creative consciousness to christen an entire album title. Now, combining all of these inputs, giving oneself up to the red light, I made red light and now it's trying to stop me, eating the night, red light protein, in addition to the obvious reference to the red light district, I claim that this red light is the irresistible force that pulls Reichwald and all of us to a material-centered, night-dwelling life of hedonism, similar to Tolstoy's elemental force, the sheer world power against which man is powerless. Red light is a kind of evil soul anglerfish, an existential red light district that draws one in with the shiny promise of capital R rap, celebrity, pleasure, wealth, only to eat us whole. This, I claim, is why Bladee turned from materialism to spiritualism in his later work. To go even further, I claim that Bladee, like all great artists and poets, understands what T.S. Eliot referred to as the objective correlative. Eliot said that the only way of expressing emotion in the form of art is by finding an objective correlative. In other words, a set of objects, a situation, a chain of events, which shall be the formula of that particular emotion, such that when the external facts, which must terminate in sensory experience, are given, the emotion is immediately evoked. In other words, the artist must show emotion through objects, not through descriptions, which brings us back to Ben's symbology. Now, this is why bad poetry sounds bad. It's all emotion, zero object. It's what Ezra Pound called emotional slither. Look for yourself. The recipe is simple. Dream big, and when you think the dream is big enough, triple it in size. Once you visualize the weight of it, what you're capable of, stretch it past the horizon of your mind until you see into the future. Sink into what's possible, then come back and get to work. This is emotional slither par excellence. Reading it, frankly, gives me the willies. That's a good way to remember the objective correlative, by the way. What is the object that correlates to the emotion you wish to convey? Look at these three new sentences, which I think get increasingly poetic and imbued with the objective correlative. First, I feel sad. Second, I sat upon a slab of rock as the purple-blue water lapped the matchstick poles of the pier. Third, I should have been a pair of ragged claws scuttling across the floors of silent sea. All three communicate sadness, but in increasingly complex ways. The final one is from Eliot himself, from his poem The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock, which we will read next week. A poem with characters so isolated, so crushed by modernity, he wishes he was simply a lobster or a crab, annihilatingly alone, scuttling across the floors of silent seas. To my ear, that is poetry. And it's why Pound was right when he said, the natural object is always the adequate symbol, and why William Carlos Williams probably said it best with his no ideas but in things. His famous poem is worth examining here. So much depends upon a red wheelbarrow glazed with rainwater beside the white chickens. So much depends upon these objects. They have a deep symbolic density. Rather than analyze the symbolism for us, Williams simply presents the objects to us. What in your heart do you believe depends upon a red wheelbarrow glazed with rainwater beside the white chickens? I don't need to tell you anything about the wheelbarrow other than that it's a wheelbarrow and that it's red. That's the object. Now you decide inside you what that object evokes. What do you feel depends upon this scene, this situation, this set of objects? It is much deeper to evoke what we feel inside ourselves as readers rather than give us any emotional slither about them. No ideas but in things. Isn't this the perfect description for Bladee? I mean, look at his first project, Glue. Here are the first lyrics from Unreal. Strawberry lip gloss, sunglasses from Oakley, high like Fuji. I wonder if you're lonely, I wish you could touch me. Touching on my touch screen. Carbonate my water, put it in the engine. He was already stuffing his art full of things in order to try to communicate the adequate emotions. Look at him describing heaven. He can only describe the things in heaven, the foxes and flowers and portals. My idea of heaven is this tunnel. I'm gliding through it. There's no air or water. This presence of light on every side is a portal to different dimension. And one is two foxes that are driving this car, and they becoming a big grinning face. Then there's rooms with big flowers spinning around. This is what makes Bladee great. He thinks in symbols. The denser the better, and he knows that he must put his ideas into things. William Carlos Williams would be proud. Now, the trick of modernity is that we can confuse this objective correlative with a kind of object worship, made increasingly difficult when you're a young, wealthy, famous rapper. The red light can swallow us whole, and Bladee is not immune to this light's effect. The Yankees logo isn't the only one that's captivated Blade. He's had phases of Burberry, Supreme, Emporio Armani, to say nothing of his lifelong fascination with Prada. The Prada boots from Italy, from the song Keys to the City. I step on spiders in my Prada loafers, from the song Smart Water. Those lyrics are Blade's objective correlative firing on all cylinders. The Montclair logo also had a stranglehold on Blade. Then I gave away my Montclair in the Sacrifice, from the song Let's Ride. So if great art must only express emotions and ideas in things, what is an artist who has his own desire for shiny things to do in a materialistic, hedonistic, money-obsessed, object-coveting world? Overdo it, exaggerate it, maximalize it, until the objects become a kind of painting, a kind of landscape. If the objects themselves are not meaningful, what is the idea or emotion that correlates to being Prada from head to toe? Stack enough of them on top of each other until you can find the meaning within, even if that meaning is a hollowness, a kind of negative meaning. It is the very emptiness of hedonism and materialism that, when maximalized, can reach the status of adequate emotion. This is why graffiti, one of Blade's early loves, was the perfect precursor to the rest of his aesthetic development. Graffiti is word-made image. What does that say, everyone asks when they look at well-made graffiti. What it says is far less important than what it is. What depends upon the tag? You tell me. What depends upon the wheelbarrow? You tell me. Graffiti is the objective correlative played out in real time. Image poetry on walls. If Blade continues his art by singing images into words, he began it by spraying words into images. Now, I'm not claiming that Blade is a modernist or an Imagiste or even a poet at the level of Eliot or Pound. Remember, this is the guy who said, "Ooh, play it like a game baseball." But I do claim that he intuits and applies the principles of the high modernists. I do claim that Blade is drawn to and invents natural objects of deep symbolic density, objects that correlate to emotions, red lights and spiders and trash and rain, and all that stand in for something beyond words, the way a Yankees and Red Sox logo do. So to conclude, do we forgive Blade for the verboten faux pas of combining these symbols? I think we should. Because even if he didn't know what he was doing, he also sort of did. Thank you for your time, and again for accommodating me missing next week. These slides are on Canvas and Google Drive. The homework question for you to consider. Pick a symbol from Ben's symbology that I did not dive into and write 750 words about its possible underpinnings. I recommend you use Eliot's essay, Hamlet and His Problems, and the essay, A Few Don'ts by an Imagiste. Both I'll link in the class drive as you write this homework. Thank you, and as Blade would say, good luck. Bye-bye.